Welcome to the second episode in the Sketch Support series. If you're enjoying the series so far, I highly recommend that you go ahead and click subscribe because this is definitely going to be an ongoing monthly series that I'm going to keep putting out there. So I've got a new free sketch to give you guys, and I also have a fun little sketch challenge and a giveaway. So you're going to find all the details for that at the end of this video. You definitely won't want to miss out on that. This time I am using a 2-page sketch, and I've created 4 layout examples all based on that sketch. All the photos that I've used on all 4 of my layouts are photos that I had previously printed long ago. And so I felt like each layout was kind of a make it work approach. And I feel like each layout example ended up being a really good look at how you can adapt a sketch to fit pretty much anything. If you want to download this sketch, you'll find the link down below that'll take you to scrapbookgeneration.com. Let's go ahead and get started and take a look at the sketch that I have used as the starting point for each layout in this video. The main components of this sketch are the horizontal background strips, this large block of elements that includes some photos, some rectangles, and the journaling, and then the 2 photos over here on the left page with the title. If you are new to Scrapbook Generation sketches, we also include measurements of each piece on the sketch, placements to help you with the arrangement of everything on the sketch, and then some additional directions. Sometimes in the additional directions there are special instructions there to help you with constructing things, but mainly what you'll see there are some optional elements that you can add, like stitching, or maybe some places that you might want to use foam adhesive, or that we recommend to use foam adhesive. We try to make sketches that are easy to use, whether you like to go off of a visual reference or you need more information like the measurements. If you enjoy using sketches, be sure to browse through our large collection of downloadable sketches and sketchbooks that we have at scrapbookgeneration.com. So let's look at how I adapted this sketch to create my first layout. The first change, and the one that probably stands out the most, is that I flipped the sketch from left to right. If you look closely at my photos, you can see that I was shooting these photos at an angle that made it so that Drew was always facing one direction. It was mostly to the right. So a pet peeve I have is arranging photos that leave the subject looking off the layout. The reason for this is when you have photos where someone is looking off the layout, you are pulling the viewer's attention off your layout, and that is the opposite of what we are trying to achieve. We want to pull the viewer in, not force them away. It's not always avoidable, but being aware of directional photos on your layout and where they are pointing is helpful when it comes to good design and arrangement of your photos. Flipping the sketch from left to right like I did, or from top to bottom, is a good way to get a different look out of a sketch with minimal effort. This works especially well for complete albums. If you're creating an album of your vacation, a great way to save some time and have a cohesive look throughout the album is by using the same sketch and flipping it for alternating pages. The second change I made was to the large block of elements. This set of photos that I decided to use had so many random sizes. I think I had printed them a few years ago with the intent to use them with a specific sketch, and then I guess I just never got around to using it. So I was working with a large variety of sizes. I had some 3x3 inch photos, a few 2.5 by 2.5 inch photos, and then 2 by 2 inch photos. So photo blocks like the one on this sketch are so easy to change up to fit your needs. I always kind of see them as a puzzle that you can customize to fit your photos and the other elements that you want to include. Since I had so many square photos, with the largest one being 3x3 inch, I thought I would make the base of my design an arrangement of 3x3 inch squares. I could fill some squares with just the full photo, other squares I could use paper to create the 3x3 inch square. Ideally, I would have 9 photos for 9 squares, but I only had 8 photos. I also still needed to include some space for my journaling as well. So instead of having 9 squares, I have 7 squares and then one 6x3 inch rectangle piece in place of the 2 remaining squares. So this gave me room for one of the smaller photos and then my journaling. Because I had so many different sizes of square photos, I decided to play around with the squares and include many different mats and layers with them. Some of them have larger mats than others, and then some have multiple mats. I just thought it would be kind of a fun way to create this block of photos. A little thing I tried to be aware of while designing this grouping is the colors that I used. Because the horizontal strips add so many colors and patterns, I tried to simplify the colors used in this block by using mostly white cardstock and white pattern papers. I also used a makeup sponge and white paint to edge each photo. This way, these photos don't end up getting lost in all of the color on the layout. These photos have some pretty bold colors in them, so I had to be really careful about that. Another thing to note about this layout and the sketch is how I adjusted this block of photos to better fit on the layout. It wasn't a huge change, but I did have to make a slight adjustment. The photo block on the sketch is 8 inches wide by 9 inches tall. So my block is 9 inches wide by 9 inches tall. So my width is 1 inch bigger. My solution, and it was super easy, was to just move the block over 1 inch towards the center of the layout, so it just lines up right on the edge of the left page. So I made a big change to the photos over here, and I also made some changes to the 2 photos on the other side. I had one 4x6 inch photo and then 3 3x2 inch photos. I wanted to still arrange them as they are on the sketch, so I added the 3 photos on a mat so that I could use it as a whole in place of one of the photos. So it still has the same general design as it does on the sketch. I've just used more photos and different sizes. Because these 2 photos are larger than the photos on the sketch, I decided to adjust the background strips to fit. On the sketch, there are 7 strips, and with the larger photos, I just didn't feel like you were seeing enough of those strips. I wanted to have some strips showing above and below the photos. So an easy solution was to simply add more strips. I added 2 more, one above and one below the photos. I also added in some smaller strips. I liked having little pops of this reddish orange throughout my layout to help match Drew's red hair. So I've got these orange strips, I've got some orange over here, and orange here, just kind of help bring that out a little bit. The last change I made was turning the banner strips on the sketch to arrow strips on my layout. So banner strips are what I call strips that have this notch on either one end or both ends. I turn them into arrow strips by making this point on one end. I always like adding arrows to my layouts that involve movement and action. So all it takes, like I said, was cutting this point on one end of each strip to create that look of an arrow. I also turned my stitching into arrows by adding a point and then some ends on each stitch line. It was kind of a fun way to play up the action and theme of my layout. That's all for this layout, so let's move on to layout number 2. I kind of went theme extreme with this one. I can't help myself. When it comes to a theme, I really like to play. I mentioned earlier that I was working with photos that were previously printed, so I had to work around different photo sizes. For this layout, I was working with 3x5" photos and 5x3" photos. This is another one of my favorite photo sizes to work with. They can oftentimes be cut down from a 4x6" print, and they are easy to use in place of 4x6" photos or 4x3" photos. It's just a fun size if you want to mix it up a little bit. To adjust the photo block to better fit my photos, I used 4 5x3" photos and 4 3x3" squares of pattern paper. I arranged them in the same design as the photos on the sketch. I'm just using larger photos and smaller cards. The width of the block stays the same as it is on the sketch because I added an inch to the photos and I took away an inch from the cards, so it all balances out. Since I had 4 5x3" photos, I extended the block to the top and bottom of the layout. Anytime you see a photo block on a sketch, a good way to include more photos is to extend it to the top and bottom of the layout. In the case of this sketch, there's nothing above or below that block, so there's plenty of open space to add more here if you need to. I kept my journaling as it is on this sketch, and for the other 3 squares, I decided to kind of play with the theme and create a scene on those pieces. On each square, I added some grass die cuts to the bottom. Then I added a couple of Easter eggs and word stickers peeking out of the grass. And then to finish, I added some scallop strips for the sky. So I used specific pattern papers for the eggs that I thought would make for a fun decorated Easter egg, and then I added some hand stitch details to help add some texture and dimension to those pieces. To help frame the photo block, I added 2 1/4" stripe strips. I love adding a stripe strip on each side of a photo block. Especially when the photo block goes from the top and bottom of the layout. To me, it helps complete that block. Stripes are so useful for helping tie all the patterns and colors together on your layout, so I will often find ways to include them where I can. The next big change I made for this layout is the background strips. I switched from the horizontal strips on the sketch to vertical strips on my layout. They cover the same background area as they do on the sketch. They're just going in a different direction. I did this because I really liked the bright and fun patterns of this paper collection, and I wanted to include more of them. So I can have more vertical strips to cover the area than I can vertical strips. So this is just an easy switch. Most of the time you can switch between horizontal strips and vertical strips on any sketch. It's one of those small changes that can make a big difference in the overall look. I used 2 3x5" photos in place of the 2 3.5" by 5" photos on the sketch. There's only a 1/2" difference in those sizes, so I didn't make any other adjustments to their arrangement. For my title, I also went with a little extra when it came to the theme. I swear I cannot help myself when I start playing with the theme. I used the same grass and small egg die cut that I did on the squares to create the same look around my title. I even used some small letter stickers on top of a few of the eggs for part of my title. I very, very much enjoy having fun with themes and finding cute little ways to incorporate them into playful elements on my layout. It's just one of my favorite things to do. So the next layout I have to share has more themed fun with the design of this sketch. To match the beach theme I have going on my layout, I used the measurements of the whole background of strips on the sketch to create a large sunburst background design. Anytime I am looking at the background of a sketch, I will look at it as a whole, not as individual pieces. Even if it's made up of individual pieces, it's acting as a whole to create a background design on your layout. So you can go from background strips to a large block or to an arrangement of background shapes. Changing that up is a great way to get more use out of a sketch by creating different looks with the background. Sunburst designs are one of my favorite designs to play around with. They do take some time to create, I'm not going to lie to you, but they are fairly easy to do. I'll show you really quick how I created mine. First, I will create a template to use by cutting a sheet of cardstock in the size I want my whole design to be. For this layout, that meant I had to cut two 10.5 by 9-inch pieces. Next, I figure out where I want all the points of the sunburst design to meet. For my design, I wanted to get a pretty even spread of the sunburst on both sides, so I put my meeting point at the bottom right on the left page of the layout. Now, you have to figure out what size do you want your sunburst strips to be. It's easiest if you pick a number that can be evenly divided into the width and height of your whole design. I went with 3 inches because it could be evenly divided into the 9-inch height and the 21-inch width of my design. I use a pencil to make a dot every 3 inches on the left edge, the top side, and the right edge. I don't make any on the bottom because my center point is so close to the bottom that I won't have any strips coming up from that angle. Once I have all of my dots on the outer edges, I use a ruler and pencil to draw a line from the dot on the edge to the center meeting point. I didn't put a dot on the corners because you don't need that measuring point. You can just line your ruler up with the corner and use it as your reference point. Then you draw a line from the corner to the center meeting point. After all the lines are drawn, I highly recommend that you number each piece. This is to help you keep everything in order. When I got to the strips that are on both pages, I numbered both pieces with the same number. As you are working, it can be kind of easy to lose which piece is going where. So this is just a little safety net so you don't end up confused on the arrangement. Now it's time to start cutting. I try to be careful and stay on the line and not make secondary correction cuts. You need these pieces to fit together, and if you try to recut something to make it more straight, your pieces won't fit together as nicely. However, if you are aiming for a design like mine, they don't have to be the most precise cuts because I covered up the seam of my strips with a stripe strip, so it completely hides any imperfections that I might have in my cutting. When you have cut out your template pieces, you can start using them to trace and cut out your pattern paper pieces. Make sure that if you are using the template on top of the pattern you want, that the number is face up. If you are using the template on the back side of the pattern, make sure that the blank side of your template, the one that does not have a number on it, is face up. This is to make sure you're getting the correct pattern you want to use, going in the correct positioning of the strip. You will use each template piece to cut out all of your pattern paper strips. I like to cut them one at a time and then adhere that strip to my layout immediately. This way I don't have a bunch of pattern paper strips laying around and then I have to figure out which one is going where. After all the strips are adhered, I added my circle for the center point of the sunburst design. I embellished it a little more by adding some hand cut suns from a pattern paper, and then I added some stitching to a few pieces. I also decided to add some finishing touches to the sunburst design by adding some hand-stitched borders, and then I added some enamel dots on top of some of that stitching. Like I said, I feel like it's an easy design, but it definitely can be time consuming. It's a little more complicated on a 2-page layout than it is on a 1-page layout, but to me it's worth the extra effort. It's just a fun design to create and play around with. I made another change to that photo block on the right page. I had a lot more photos that I wanted to include with this layout, so I removed the 4x3" rectangles on the sketch and replaced them with 4x3" photos. I also extended the height of the photo block by adding 2 extra photos. On the left page, I was faced with another make it work challenge with my photos. I had a few extra photos that I wanted to include. So I had this 4x6" photo and then 2 3x4" photos. 2 of the photos, this one and this one, had a lot of empty space. So I was able to overlap all of these photos quite a bit. So I wasn't really taking up a whole lot more of space than the photos on the sketch. I also moved them closer to the center meeting point of my sunburst design. I used the center of the sun as my title, and I wanted to have my photos closer to that. I always try to place my title around some photos to help bring attention to both elements. Because I ended up using only photos on the right page, I needed to find a new home for my journaling. So thanks to the empty space in the top of the 4x6" photo, I had the perfect spot to add some journaling. I enjoy using journaling strips because I can mold them around elements on my layout or subjects in my photo. They just make it easier to add journaling pretty much wherever you want. So that brings us to the last layout based on this sketch. For the last layout, I like to show how you don't always have to follow the size of the sketch. A 2-page sketch can always be used for a 1-page layout and vice versa. You have a few options when reducing a 2-page sketch to a 1-page layout. One option is to use either the left side or the right side as a single page. Another option is to shrink the whole design on 2 pages to fit on a 1-page layout. And then the last option, which is what I did with this layout, is to focus on a main element or 2 as your target for design. In my case, I used the background strips and the arrangement of the title and photos on the left page to act as inspiration for my design. A little side note that I want to mention, if you enjoy using 6x6 paper pads on full-size layouts, I created this whole design with all 6x6" papers. It made this layout go together so much faster. I love using 6x6 paper pads whenever I can. It seems to just make my scrapbooking life much easier. So all of the strips are 6 inches long, but to help cover more ground and create a larger background, I arranged them so that they are kind of staggered. I also overlapped them to squeeze in all the colors I wanted to include. Another addition I made was adding a few smaller strips here and there. So I was going for kind of a comical approach to this layout. I thought it would be funny to take a negative word and a negative mood and create something pretty with it. I did test it out on Drew, who is around 2 in the photo, and he's now almost 15, and he got a pretty good laugh out of it. So I would say that I definitely achieved what I was going for. I wanted the title and photo to take center stage, so I used this hilarious Nope SVG file designed by Paige Evans and put it right smack in the center of my layout. And then I added my photo above it. The title and photo are still grouped together in the same way as they are on the sketch, but because the title is so big, it created a completely different look. When you are condensing a 2-page sketch into a 1-page layout, you might have to figure out where to put photos, journaling, and the title when they might be spread out on both pages of the sketch. For my journaling, I thought it would be a good idea to place it below the title on the opposite side of the photo to help create some balance on the layout. Then to complete the layout, I added some hand stitching, some butterflies, vines, hearts, and then one of my favorites, word stickers. So there you have it, one sketch, 4 completely different looking layouts. I thought maybe since we were all stuck at home right now that it might be fun to introduce a sketch support challenge. So the challenge I'm presenting to you is to use the free sketch that I've used in this video as inspiration to create your own layout. So I'm going to have a sketch support challenge post on Facebook. It will be pinned right at the top of my Facebook page, and I will link to that below so that you can find it. And what you'll do is after you create your layout, you'll go to that post on Facebook and in the comments post a picture of your layout. So the fun part for me is that I get to see all of your creations because I absolutely love getting to see these sketches come to life through your layouts. So the fun part for you is that I will randomly select one person to receive $20 of downloadable sketches, and you get to choose, mix and match and pick whichever ones you want, just in case you already have some. I'll leave that option completely up to you. I'll give you a month to complete a layout, and then I'll do the drawing and announce the winner on April 27th. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see what you guys create with this sketch.